Homes have never been more unaffordable. Council house waiting lists have never been longer. We're in a housing crisis. We tell ourselves that only big developers can deliver at the speed and scale needed to tackle a crisis this vast. What if things could be different? What if the power and resources to create good homes lay in the hands of our communities? The whole thing has got to change. Let's completely reimagine how we're going to do it and how a community like Knowle West could do housing on its own terms. So We Can Make is a community-led organisation based here in Knowle West, South Bristol, and we unlock microsites to create affordable homes for local people in housing need. How crazy is it that it's really radical in housing to start with people? Usually things like with sites and how much money can you make out of developing a particular bit of land, whereas We Can Make starts with people and their housing needs. So our housing pioneers, John, Tony and Bill, I think they've all got different stories about how they got involved with this.
My name's John Bennett. I'm a resident of the We Can Make collective, I suppose. Someone said to me once, you're only one payday away from being homeless, and I think we all are, really. You know, although we can have a bit of money in the bank, you'd be surprised how quickly that gets eaten up once you stop putting money in on a regular basis, you know. Especially in Bristol, it's just got ridiculous. You won't get nothing for less than £500 now in Bristol, and then they're going to put bills on top of that. About 5 years ago now, I was absolutely skint money-wise, and there was no way could I even rent a room in a house. Plus, I still needed to support my family. Both my daughters work night shifts in care homes, so I needed to offer support to other people as well as look after myself. And because of my economic situation, I couldn't really expect a lot more. And I got sort of stuck in that then. I couldn't see a way of getting out of that. I also really lowered my expectations as well. I lived quite a low-level life. I didn't wash that much, and my diet was shockingly bad and got into some bad habits. I got to the stage where I was drinking a lot, drinking most nights, smoking heavily. On the way in was popping to the off licence to get 6 cans. My target was to get to sleep as quickly as possible. I was going to bed at sort of 7 or 8 o'clock at night, like, you know, just because it was no fun being there. When I got to the first winter, it was very cold, but it was the darkness which depressed me the most, or which got me really down. Especially being a man of a certain generation, there's still that stigma attached to mental health, and so yeah, it was quite depressing. Around about the same time, I bumped into Melissa Mean of Knowle West Media Centre. And we were chatting, she said, oh, you're a builder, aren't you? You need to get involved with our We Can Make project. We need builders to get involved. She said, well, you're the ideal candidate. We'll put you down as the first resident of We Can Make.
So we describe our process of development as urban acupuncture. It's a kind of gentle densification, finding the small little sites across the neighbourhood where you can put a new home in exactly where people need it. What we wanted to do is start a different conversation about housing and invite people in. We met Bill through one of those conversations. He understands the pressures of what it is about, you know, not to have a home of your own. Bill and Liam did a really radical, amazing thing, and they were able to help John in a very powerful way.
They're talking to locals with big gardens about a community project where they could either help families move into a house or homeless people to move into a house, and building it from scratch in the garden. I thought it was a good idea. The only condition was that if Liam didn't like the person moving in, it wouldn't happen, because it's his home as well as my own. I just finished the messy divorce, and was a single dad with Liam. John was in a similar sort of situation, and I thought I would try and do something that was good for the community, as well as having another neighbour that was close by for safety reasons. If anything ever happened to me, Liam could go out the back door, go to John's. So he came to the house, sat down, had coffee, and talked about what his goals were, what happened within his life, what happened within mine. And Liam thought John was absolutely brilliant. They took together it was like sponge and water. We built it from there. I have been homeless in my life, and it isn't the greatest thing in the world. So to give someone else an opportunity to have a home was a good thing. It was just nice to be nice to someone.
One of our other community pioneers is Tony and her daughter Amancia, and they show how we can help with a different kind of challenge.
I was living with my daughter, my mum and my dad, and the space was quite cramped. I only had my bedroom. Like, we was allowed in the living room, but it's small enough just for like 2 people, so we used to just either sit in the kitchen, sit upstairs. It's been quite difficult. It took a bit of convincing because my mum loves our garden. Like, she liked going out, but then obviously it was just a lot of lawn mowing, and my dad, he didn't want to keep doing the garden, so they decided to take the opportunity. It was a fantastic opportunity. I was really excited.
Because we know exactly who those homes are going to be for, we can absolutely involve them to help co-design what that home is going to be, what it's going to look like. I mean, it's just transformative because they're involved in every stage. We're putting digital fabrication tools and technology in people's hands in our community factory, making the parts for their home.
We can happen to have a CNC machine, which that's the main machine that's needed. I'm Jonathan Green, I run Block Build. Our sort of approach is to make these manhandleable sized cassettes which act as a structural shell of the building. There's no other material apart from the single type of sheet material in the installation. That's cut out, put together with screws and a mallet, and then they are all sequenced and numbered, so it's super quick. And it kind of engages with the community, which is specifically what this project was about.
You get to join in with making your house. So I made the walls in the factory, which was cool. I've never done that before, so I learnt new skills from that.
You know, usually in the development process, the value of new development just washes through the community and gets, kind of hoovered up by a developer. But here, we're making sure that community wealth stays here in the form of jobs, skills, infrastructure.
Seeing Tony in the workshop cut those on a CNC machine out of sheet material, then John putting the fabric of the building together, it was really enjoyable.
It was quite enlightening because I didn't realise how easy it was going to be. I mean, I changed from being a traditional builder to a builder of modern methods of construction. Being involved that deeply, you sort of, it's yours, isn't it? It becomes yours.
It feels like a bit of a family environment, really collaborative.
You weren't on your own, someone always joined in, or someone always came down to see if I was okay. So that was really nice.
Rather than just trying to build the quickest, cheapest unit, We're actually designing in what people really want from a home. You know, good for people, enough space and light inside, and warm enough and low cost to run. We need to build homes that are good for people and good for the planet.
We're generally saving about 45% of the carbon in a build using our timber cassette system.
We want to push that even further. You know, carbon zero, carbon positive. What's great about working in this way, using the local factory, is that you can transport those parts to site without having to rely on really big trucks. Instead, you can use cargo bikes and the electric van.
On site they go together, you know, 1 to 100, and it's just kind of like placing Lego bricks.
And then I opened the door for the first time. It's just amazing how it's ended up. I've made more friendships, become more confident, more self-esteem. I'm more independent, so that's quite cool. Amanda's a lot calmer. Yeah, she's brilliant. Yeah, I kind of practicing from the West now.
I always say to people, like, I've just finished building my own house. And I think I can just about get away with saying that. I moved in the day before my birthday. It was that moment like, nah, this is it, I'm in now. But I just felt over the moon. I didn't ever have a vision of it all being in the same room at the same time. When I actually got in there and sat in there and looked around it, I'm really, really pleased with the way it's all come together. I do really feel connected to it. I wasn't really looking after myself very well, but now I'm able to live a much fuller life and a much happier life. It gives me that opportunity to have somewhere to call people in, if you know what I mean, for somewhere to come and visit me. My daughters and my grandchildren, they now see my house is somewhere they can come as well, and they're really proud of it as well. They really like the space. That fills me with pride.
That moment of being welcomed in by John and Tony for the first time into their home when they've got their keys in their hand, that is something very, very special. And it doesn't feel like you're stepping into like a new build off of some generic estate. You're definitely stepping into somebody's home.
These homes have been someone's home in their heart from the day they were a line on the page. There's a sense of belonging and well-being even before the walls are constructed, and you can't buy that. So that's why projects like this are important.
I think they're absolutely awesome. The one in my garden should have been there in the beginning. It looks like it just belongs there. It's something that should have been done years ago. You're doing something that will help. It's an idea that is cottoned on within the neighbourhood. Gave me the confidence. I went back to work this year after being unemployed for 8.5 years. There is no real negatives.
I think the We Can Make project just has so much potential. There's things like the land transfer model, which is, groundbreaking, never been done before. This has the potential really to be scaled up and adapted to other areas across the country on a national level.
Sometimes you look at what we've done. We built 2 homes and you go, oh gosh, that's really quite small. Especially if you look at it compared to the enormity of the housing crisis. But actually, small can be powerful. Small can be really big. We know that there's lots of other communities like Knoll West facing similar challenges to us. And what we've made and discovered here is up for others to adapt and adopt for their own housing situation. And we've got all of the know-how, all of the toolkits, all of the policies, they're there now, so other communities like Knoll West can use them, and they will have it so much easier than we have. Imagine the other neighbourhoods across Bristol, the rest of the country, using the same tools and putting in their 100 homes exactly where they need them. Suddenly you've got thousands of homes, low carbon, community owned, community made. Now that's a revolution I could get behind. That is a demonstration of what this community can do when it works together. That's really powerful. And that's individuals like John, Tony, and Bill, having faith, having trust and going for it, making a different kind of world.
I don't think there is anything that is more important than sorting out our energy system into a way that's not going to be destroying the planet. There just isn't anything more important than that at the moment. It's reached such a point of crisis.
It's a major crisis that doesn't feel like enough importance is being put on.
There's only like 4 or 5 years now until we'll break the 1.5 degrees warming target. You might decarbonise by 2050, but if you do all the work in the last decade, then it might well be too late. I think we need to start now with a great sense of urgency.
The planet is just naturally very beautiful, and we want to be able to use a sustainable source of energy that isn't going to harm the planet. We don't want to turn the world we have into like a horrible dystopia. We want to live in a nice world. We want electricity, but not at the cost of the entire earth.
Most of you who are here probably know what the concept of power station is. It was just an idea, basically, a concept of bringing together a community around renewable energy on one street. And it happens to be the street that most of us live on.
Name is Ijaz Hussain, 131 Lynmouth Road. But call me Ali. Easy.
My name is Nora Mannion.
Hi, my name is Fatima. I'm 19 years old.
I'm 18.
I'm 15.
My name is Chi, and I'm at number 63 Lynmouth Road.
We live in the last house on the street, number 150.
So can you just say your name and where we are?
George Thompson, Garage, Lynmouth Road.
Does that worry you at the moment, like the volatility of the prices of energy?
It worries me if it's going to go up to, the percentage that they're saying it is.
At this point, there's a massive cost of living crisis as well.
You analyse these things when your bills are going through the roof and you're not sure of what to do next, like most of the country, I suppose.
We have like this little meter in the house, and it tells you on a daily basis how much money you're spending on energy. And lately it's just been going up and up and up, so you can see the change with your own eyes.
Bills are going up, electricity, water, so it is becoming harder to run a household.
It could be freezing in this country and people are scared to even put their heating on.
I'm sitting in a blanket because I can't afford to pay the bill, because I've got this system. It shows you £15 a day, £16 a day. Just can't do it. I'm a retired old boy.
I mean, now I just worry when I have to turn on the heating, and I need it because of my health condition.
The financial and ecological crises are intertwined. We had this idea that we'll act like the government, create our own stimulus, our own Green New Deal.
The reality is if the government was to get every home in this country, turn it into a power station, then the cost of that would be paid for by the sun itself within about a 10-year period. It's just absurd that that's not happening, so why don't we make it happen? Should we hit the street then?
Yes.
Good luck.
Hello.
So we'd like as many people as possible to put these posters up.
We're going to raise the money to offer everyone no strings attached free solar energy. We're going to sell art, and then with the proceeds we'll buy all the solar panels.
What kind of qualifications have you got to be doing this then?
Fuck you. We used to run our own artist bank up the road. We sold banknotes and bought up and then blew up 1.2 million of high interest debt. So now it's like a political campaign, like this is what the government should be doing. And we're seeing ourselves as like putting a Green New Deal stimulus into the street.
Dear neighbour, we're now moving to put in panels on the first 20 houses on the street. You would have thought on a street of 134 houses, 20 houses would not be an issue. Oh my God.
It still does feel like the future is in the control of the big companies that make big bucks.
It feels very much that it's all just about money. It's a duty of care of like these big businesses to do more.
It's difficult not to feel a little bit despairing.
Where you just kind of don't get involved in things that you feel like you can't change.
A lot of people in this country feel a little bit powerless.
You, because of the money, are trying to put the brakes on. The point was we wanted to do the whole street, but yeah, financially we've got a bigger challenge ahead.
You've got all these amazing ideas, and I'm like, where's the money? You know, because we don't have enough yet.
I know, but we will.
Are you frightened up there?
Yeah, I really am. Power to the people. The couple taking fundraising to new heights to bring solar energy to their street.
We're staying on the roof until we raise enough money to get our power station built.
We're actually trying to raise £100,000. Fingers crossed we can get there. So the idea is that we'll sleep up here every night until we've raised enough money. It's certainly a cold experience.
I really don't.
What you could do with those is just put them flat on the ground and tie them, and then when the wind stops we can put them back up.
I think we spoke about this as well, Dan and Hilary, that you know better than anyone what it's like to live on a roof because you were up there, so you know what it's like to be a solar panel essentially, and it does get windy and stormy up there.
This is Tom from Octopus. This is Nick.
Hello.
Meg.
Hi.
Sharon.
Hi, Nick.
Hi.
Hi Meg.
That's
Hi, Sharon.
Ejaz there.
But yeah, the goal is 5th of June to start installing.
Woohoo! Sounds great. The first 15 houses on the street have all had panels put on from Octopus. So now where we're at is we want to take everything that we've learned and the partnerships which we've created, which have been hard won as well, take those out across Britain.
So you're producing electricity straight away now?
Most of the house's energy was all running off the solar panels.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. I was like, okay, yeah, this is more than I expected.
Yeah. I'm going to have a powerhouse. It's amazing. I'm over the moon.
What I have learned is, as a group, when we come together, anything's possible, because we thought this was going to take us a good couple of weeks.
Really?
So we've done really well with the installation, really well.
And also we raised some money to put solar panels on the school. We are working with Solar for Schools to get all our schools in Waltham Forest generating their own energy so they can save money and reduce their carbon emissions too.
We need to pull together and stand up to these bigger companies.
Power means everything.
Government has responsibility. We've got to make sure we wake them up.
When we involve people and we take the time to think about how do people participate in the climate crisis, that is how transformation happens.
You end up transforming the way people think about their energy and transforming the way they think about owning the infrastructure around them.
It's we've kind of had a little almost like proof of concept in London and showing, this very localized kind of impact, but how that can scale and adapt to different contexts. So it's really a show and do project.
We have to take power back to ourselves by actually doing something. not just by talking about it.
Power means strength, dignity, everyone coming as one.
I think I'd love to be a part, even if that's a small part, in creating some change.
It's about the growing awakening. We're seeing all around us that we can have the power to make change.
And change the way Britain powers itself.
I mean, who knows? Everybody, Waltham Forest, everyone in the UK might end up with solar panels. It would be so amazing.
So now that we've watched the Power Station film, and now that we've watched the We Can Make film, we are incredibly lucky to be joined by the creators and the organizations that were in both of those. We have Dan and Hilary from the Power film, and we have Clare, who's in We Can Make in Bristol. And it's probably worth mentioning right off the bat that We Can Make in Bristol are going to be a co-host of this festival down the line. So on October the 6th, we're going to be in your backyard. And yeah, the program that Norwest Media Centre and We Can Make have put together looks absolutely amazing. So definitely put that in your schedules if you haven't already. Do you want to just put the map up for a second? There we go. So yeah, there it is, as well as all the other venues. So keep that in mind, because this was the first venue, and we have much more to come after this, and much more to look forward to. So brilliant. Now, I think the first thing that it would obviously be great to do is just hear a bit about, so when you're doing this kind of work, obviously it's quite rapid, right? Like things turn on a dime, things can change entirely within a week. You can be, inside one day and sleeping on your roof the next. So what I thought would be a nice way to start would be to maybe just kind of get a little insight into what's happened since what we just saw on screen, and what is both, I guess, the journey of the work and also your journey as people within that since the sort of little documentaries that we just saw in the films. So I don't know if maybe we'll do reverse order of the film if you guys want to start.
Hi, thanks.
Oh, you got to switch it up.
Hello. Oh, well, thanks for having us. It's great to be here, and I think we're really informed by all the work that we're meeting through this kind of process over the last few years. I mean, not that we've been working, but, hearing about other projects around the country. So seeing that film was a bit like, oh my God, that's already totally out of date. Like you say, it's like, kind of cringing. But since the rooftop, which was the kind of final push to get to the capital amount that we needed, we then had a massive gap, which is, it felt massive, a few months where you want to keep that momentum up because you're constantly having to engage community, to keep doing events, make sure that there's a kind of responsibility there in the promises that you kind of make to your community that things are going to come through. And we had issues with installers, and at the same time we'd raise money for the local school, and then the council were standing in the way of that. So many behind the scenes problems. But then the installations happened on the first rooftops in July, and that was with Octopus Energy, who stepped in as the installer, which was great to have a trusted installer, but also there's problematics with suddenly power station posters were joined by pink octopuses on the street, and but it was great to be able to know that the infrastructure going on people's rooftops, like EJAZ, who you saw in the film, was actually good. It was it was going to work. There weren't going to be technical issues straight away. And then since then it was the aim in the project, the way we tell the story and make the film and create these kind of interventions in hopefully public imagination and reach out beyond the hyperlocal. So it was where next with that story? How can we have the biggest impact on national imagination and policy? And that's through the first tentative steps now in seeing how that we can work with other communities and other streets across the nations, hopefully, in the way that this story shows that all these solutions are already here and happening, and the motivation is there, and so kind of yeah, like you're talking about, this kind of demonstration of possibility and how we make that visible in the way that we kind of reach out across social media and then filmmaking. So is that it?
Anything you'd add, Dan?
I actually don't think there was. I think she covered it all. Where else have we been since then? Maybe the school, do you think? The schools? Because we collaborate with a lot, rather than trying to reinvent everything ourselves. I think it was something that when we first started Power Station, we really had no idea about how renewable technology works, or much technological know-how at all, actually. Maybe we've, got a little bit more now. But really, like, we think of the primary technology as being storytelling. It's an ancient technology, and this is, by the way, totally cribbed from Ella Saltmarsh from her Instagram last week. But who did that podcast about being a good ancestor, and I saw a reference book to that. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is to tell a new story about what is possible, and we're trying to usurp the reins, if you like, of the story, and take it away from the passive idea of, the future belongs to some remote sort of Uber decision makers, town planners, mastermindy, whatever, and to actually challenge that idea and to try and think, why don't we just go for it? Just the everyday people, on the street, whatever an everyday person's meant to be anyway. I don't even know what that is. I've never met actually an everyday person. But what I mean by that is that ultimately, if we can challenge these ideas that we are somehow powerless, and then we can reverse that in ourselves and in our communities, then really the Power Station isn't about technology. It's actually about, or at least not kind of renewable technology, although obviously that's important. The important technology is about what we can do together, when we come together and we put out the little feelers of communication with one another, and we come into one another's orbits, that we can unlock these powers. And I think that's what I'm so sorry, I was just waffling along, aren't I?
No, that's a very poetic waffle. I think it's been a common thread of the last couple of days that something that's incredibly important is the need to generate power in a social sense as well as in a literal through solar panels kind of way. So it's very representative of a lot of conversations we've had in the last couple of days. And Claire, with your work, you have joined We Can Make not super long ago, right?
Yeah, just over a month.
And so one thing that I think is really useful from that perspective then is, seeing the documentary and thinking about, in particular, your role and maybe a bit of like your personal journey of like what does the kind of work you do typically look like in the rest of the world, and now what does it look like at We Can Make, and does that sort of tell a bit of a story about how this could be in a situation where we do manage to shift these power systems that we're talking about?
So I am the new project architect at We Can Make. And previously I was working in a more kind of generic private practice, so doing a lot of like residential buildings, so with private clients and developers. And with the developer work, I always felt very like removed from the end user, and so quite frustrated by that. And then with the private practice, it was you're working with people, but ultimately they have a lot of money to be able to hire an architect and go through that kind of process of designing their dream home. So I think my transition to We Can Make kind of came from like a place of frustration in a way, and wanting to really help have more of an impact on everybody. So yeah, I had seen the job advertised and was very I saw the film and was just really inspired by what they were doing. And because I think you study a lot of that at university, but you never really there's really very little of it actually happening in the architecture world. So it was, a really good opportunity to get to actually work with people and empower communities to have a say about what their houses are like.
yeah, from one recovering architect to another, I feel you. And from, I guess, the work that you've been doing since you joined, is there, how does it feel like the work has sort of maybe evolved, or what's next for it since what we saw in the film?
Well, the two of them have been built, and there's currently, the aim is to do 2 every year. So there's 2 more in for planning at the moment. It's a very slow process. It took about 8 months just to get them registered. So, but fingers crossed they'll come through. And then kind of in tandem to the planning process, we're also doing research and development projects. So trying to refine the houses with each batch. So the current one is a research and development project called Homegrown Homes, and the ambition is to basically build these houses out of, everything being sourced within 100 miles of Bristol. So that all of that is kind of feeding into this, and we'll continue to refine the process. And then it's also maintaining relationships with the people who are living in these houses, and going and doing kind of gardening days and just that kind of human aspect.
And could you unpack a little bit about why sourcing the materials within that range is aspirational?
Well, I guess it's a lot to do with kind of the embodied carbon of construction, and kind of wanting to reduce that as much as possible, and also to kind of demonstrate that we can do it in the UK, and if we can do it in Bristol, then other people can copy it elsewhere.
Yeah, amazing, thank you. And so I hope that, it's very, evident, especially if you've been here for the last 2 days, that there's a huge amount of overlap between this work and the sort of shifts that we're trying to highlight through the wider festival. And Sarah, could you put that on the screen just so we have it as a reference? So it's the next one, I think. There you go. So, I think you guys almost said word for word, essentially house by house to street by street, or street as a living system, treating people rather than customers as social collectives. All of these shifts have come up in a myriad of ways in all of the different organizations we've heard from, all of the different community groups. And just to, land the conversation now back into the wider intent of the festival and the wider intent of, I think, all of our work, I'm just going to invite Imi and John back up to join us. And I'd be very interested in both. And Kamran's still here? Amazing. Brilliant. Where is he? Is he hiding? Well, he will be around eventually. So, I guess maybe, Imi, as you've been holding sort of through today and yesterday a lot of the wider framing of the Civic Square work and the festival, how do you see, the sort of overlap between these different bits of work, and especially these sort of almost I suppose, shared values or aspirations for how this kind of interaction with the built environment, retrofit, housing, et cetera, could be sort of shifted and reimagined.
Thanks so much, Charlie. What a lovely end to these 2 days. It's so great to be here with you folks. And I guess people have heard me talk a little bit about why we're doing this, and as a group of people that started off as a group of young people 12 years ago, just organising around our dreams and hopes and frustrations in Birmingham. And we're practically demonstrating and building quite a lot. So we're not like festival planners, that's not what we like to do. We somehow squeeze these convenings in to our year, because at the heart of so much of this work is what I was saying this morning. This story that is emerging is not one of Dan and Hilary are cool and they're doing something in Walthamstow, and We Can Make are cool and they're doing something in Bristol, and then Civic Square, and we tell these individual stories of they're amazing heroes, right? Everybody is, and one of the reasons why a lot of heroics are having to happen to show this work is because fundamentally underneath, the fact that land is a speculative asset for few people to make a lot of money off, instead of something held in common in a community land trust, or the fact that we have all the technology to generate our own energy and to create community wealth, and for schools to be able to reduce their bills and all the practical things that the Powell film shared. But you're paying bills that are 4 times the amount that you were a couple of years ago, but the shareholders of some of those big companies are taking home hundreds of millions. These are like both injustices and challenges within the system, norms and shifts that are like have taken hundreds of years to get here, and also are going to take time, energy, activism, creativity, imagination to shift. And so for us, like putting on Retrofit Reimagined, and the things that we tend to do when we bring everyone together is not to be festival producers, like not at all. In fact, this takes up so much time in like what we actually trying to do. Gavin's here from Link Road, and he's like, you ain't been in touch with us for a couple of weeks. And it's like, yeah, I know, because we literally, you know, off in this direction. It's because of this piece that Magda talked about earlier, this word that we keep saying, transition, over the last few days. Like, it is about the fact that everything around us is changing. We have contributed to some of that. We have there's a lot of different nuances in all of this, and we need to demonstrate the futures we want to be in. We've used loads of examples of that, from the neighbourhood GPs and how they came around, and how community libraries came around, and how big stories that were huge what-ifs hundreds of years ago became what we understood as normal, right? And in the middle of all of that is always all these people who are everybody who knows them thinks they're bonkers. They're like on the edge. They're sleeping on the roof. They're trying to retrofit hundreds of houses. They're the annoying one at the dinner table. They're overthrowing the Reba president whenever they have a chance. You know, they're doing all these things. But ultimately, these are not individual stories of heroics. And the fact that sometimes we put all these stories on as individual heroes is actually really problematic for the work, right? This is a movement of people that are both, like pioneers and like, you know, working really hard and love the places in which they live, are trying to turn their skills and their practices and the things they care about into the most amount of common good. But it's about a story that I think is inevitable. Any of you who were here at the neighbour panel last night will know that the people who understand this most clearly are those on the ground who are experiencing it. We know that the biggest shifts in society come from the ground organising, and then everything else catches up. And so we're in a moment where everything's going to change. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people, no matter what the mainstream media tell you, that believe that things like our land can be held in common. Things like a few people at the top of companies earning hundreds of millions in shareholder profit instead of wealth staying within the community. There are so many people doing this work, and Retrofit Reimagined is about coming and travelling around the country and saying, hold on a second, right, okay, well, we can't do anything about the Daily Mail right now, but with the power of all of these incredible demonstrators, the stories that are happening here, these are going to be inevitabilities by the time we're 50, 60, 70, hopefully even quicker. And what we can do to bring ourselves together and shine a light on this as quickly and as boldly and as creatively as possible is really like the reason behind the festival. And I guess I'm really interested in John and I know what's brought us together, but I'm also interested in just like what attracts you folks as well to Retrofit Reimagined, to like what's the power of people like us organising together, and I guess like I really would love to hear from anyone here who's like, what does this mean? Like, what does it mean for us to sit in this room together and hear these ideas and be starting to come together across different ideas and dreams and hope? So yeah, that's it from me to kick off.
Yeah, so maybe that would be a great sort of open invitation then, not only to you guys, but Kamran, John, what are your, I suppose, in terms of coming together like this, seeing inter-organizational work like this not as competition, which would be the norm, but as a collaborative endeavor to a sort of larger, future of a just transition. What are your hopes? What's bringing you here?
I will go first, as I have the microphone. So something I've noticed generally since starting to work more with like kind of community interest companies is there is this real ethos of people wanting to work together, and it's not about competition. And I think just the power of that and everybody kind of joining the dots, like it's huge. It's such a big kind of motion and movement together. So I think, yeah, and I think personally I really love that kind of positive energy of people really wanting to kind of club together, share resources, and just, yeah, not be kind of competing.
I like if anyone wants to watch Taken with Liam Neeson, but that quote, you've got a specific, I can't do it, but specific set of skills. And I like that in this, we can all have our specific set of special skills or talents, and that we don't have to reinvent the wheel and repeat or enter areas where we're not comfortable, because we know that someone else has got that in a way, and that we don't, so then we can do the things that bring us joy. I mean, maybe not all the time. There are elements of admin and production that we have to undertake, all of us, and things that we don't like so much, but if we're working together, then we can take those things that make us most joy, and it's so niche and so different for different people, but that if we're in a collective ecosystem of that, then we can all focus on our, specific skills.
Yeah, I love the intensity of that reference. At the risk of going on a bit of a tangent, one of our favorite precedents, the Tredegar Medical Society, which was the grassroots organization that eventually led to the NHS. Is it Audrey Bevan, was it? Yeah. But essentially, Mr. NHS, as they were beginning to roll that out at a national scale, there's a surprisingly intense quote where he says, something to the effect of, all we're doing is extending to the nation what we had access to in Tredegar. We will Tredegarize you. And it was such an intense final statement for what is really such an incredibly generous thing to want for everyone. But yeah, very intense. So I like the sort of throwback to that. Yeah, we have a particular set of skills, but in a good way, in a nice way.
The next line of that is, and we will find you. And we will hurt you. I think that's obviously we're not going to do that.
Yeah, no, it has to be we will find you and we will retrofit you. And yeah, John and Kamran, be interested as well in your reflections on that same question of like what sort of attracts you to these sorts of spaces, and this, I guess, way of coming together beyond the neighborhood and the organizational scale.
I just a continuation of the point about skills. I think like these sort of spaces need to encourage us to do the skills audit within our communities. Who's got what skills? Because not everybody is a visionary, not everybody can do planning. Everyone has different skills, but they all have a role to play in what we want from a community. Even how Retrofit Balsall Heath came about, for instance, it was John who brought me into the whole journey. And I recall, was it during COVID time when we were having the meetings?
Yeah.
When John phoned me up and he said, Kamran, look, I'm having these meetings. Although I'm representing Balsall Heath as a white person, I don't feel I'm representing all of Balsall Heath. I'd really like you on board. And retrofitting wasn't an area of my expertise. But John empowered me to get involved. And then from there, that snowballed and it rolled. And it started, we're a lot further now than what we were a few years ago. Yes, we have issues. We have quite a few issues that need to be dealt with. But festivals like this need to be expanded. We need to bring in, we need more people from our communities. We need to bring in them. And that's our job. That's not your job now. That's for us to, next time, if we were to do this again, we don't do it for 2 days. We do it for a whole week. We make sure that the Bahu Trust, I'm sure this is, we hold half a day at the Bahu Trust. We hold half a day at Al-Abbas Islamic Center. Abbas, sorry, I put you in it if I'm in it too, so you. There's, MEC Trust, that we all play our part because, like I mentioned earlier, we tell stories in different ways. We learn from you, you learn from us. And that's why spaces like this, even the way we cater our language, there's so much so much we can do, but it's very important that we empower each other and we know how to get the best out of each other.
Yeah, and I was joking because we have this thing in the team where like we start off with a couple of hours. 12 years ago we met up in a coffee shop, and then somehow last year we did a 3-week festival, and we were like, we'll never do anything like that again. That was ridiculous. And then this year it's like 11 weeks and in 3 different countries and 5 different places. So that's why I was laughing. But no, this is absolutely our reason for not being in our place like we were last year for 3 days, and joining forces with everybody else, because actually it's completely unsustainable for it to be held in one place as well, but also for it to be this has to be grown in hundreds and hundreds of streets and communities and neighbourhoods, and the most important thing that any of us who are either further down the journey or got different tools and resources can do is just open them up, so they can be hacked, so they can be translated, so they can be reimagined, repurposed to the context. Like yesterday we had some Punjabi speakers, and I was like, oh God, I'd love to just do a panel in Punjabi. Like, it's one thing I can actually offer. And the way that the conversation was happening was just completely different, right? And so absolutely, I think this is the whole reason for being here, because that should grow in its own way, and we've all got to bring so much more to this to get out to many different parts of the community in our neighbourhoods.
I think it's. I'm reminded of something Imi said a few months ago about us each doing the biggest, boldest thing that we possibly can in this time of climate emergency and all these intersecting crises. And thank you, Charlie, for reminding us about the sort of energy that Aneurin Bevan and the incoming Labour government brought in 1948 at the foundation of the NHS. And we referenced that at the Retrofit Reimagined last year. So I was really very excited to get all the health people here yesterday on this sofa, some amazing people just talking about how that could be taken forward with Retrofit. But I think in answer to the question, why is this important? I think it's I think there are a couple of sort of 3-step things I just want to outline. The first one is that we're talking about 3 concentric circles, if you like: the house, the community, and the values. And this is outlined on one of the banners up there. What is Retrofit? And we've been talking in Balsall Heath. We started about insulation. So the first concentric circle is the house, or ideally the whole street. Insulating the house, reducing the energy right down, putting the solar on the roof, as Hilary and Dan have been showing us fantastically, so that you can reduce the energy right down, get to zero carbon. That's the first circle. The second is community, and I think that's what we've really demonstrated during these 2 days. There are so many intersectionalities of urban ecology and transport with Nassim and the bicycles, and all these multiple different bits of community that Kamran and so many other people have been talking about. So I feel really invigorated that the community bit is so important. But the third bit is the values, and I'm so touched that we've had Kamran talking from a faith-inspired perspective. We've got all this galaxy of washing line stuff that Tokir's been curating, and those values which Jules was talking about, behind perhaps the faith traditions, the non-faith traditions, are the basic human values of kindness, gentleness, looking out for one another, and all those for me are completely shining through. And I felt it was a bit of a risk that our local community group said, we want to put up prayers and things. I was thinking, how will this be received by other people? But I think those values which are behind all of that are really shining through for me. So that's the first 3-step process. But the second 3-step process in Balsall Heath is looking at our houses around us. They were built, many of them 100 years ago, by private landlords who bought up that land, and they were built 100 years ago by kind of private sector money. A generation ago in the 80s, 90s, they were then, as part of the urban urban renewal programme. None of them had internal toilets or anything, and they were re-enveloped by the local authority then, so that was public money, public ownership coming to do that. But the third step now in the 2020s is refitting them for the 21st century, for this time of climate ecological emergency. And so it seems to me, I'd never sort of crystallized it really in this way, but the people power that is represented during this whole two-day festival and on these sofas before your very eyes at the moment, it's completely logical sequence that should be a community-led thing by people. It's sort of an inevitability, it seems to me. It's a tidal wave breaking with the same unstoppable force of that with which the NHS was founded. So I think certainly we couldn't do it in Balsall Heath without feeling that the energy is coming from around the country. And, you know, thank you again, Hilary and Dan. Your film is such an inspiration that it shares those moments of up on the roof with the rain pelting down and everything. And all of us in what we're doing, we were sharing honestly in our group, you know, what's been really hard, what's gone wrong, what we want to improve, as well as what's worked really well. So I think the only way we can do the people-powered bit is to come together and to support one another and to share those values, to share that unstoppable energy and support each other.
Thank you all for those reflections. And so we've got just over 15 minutes left here today, and I think it's a good opportunity to use some of that remaining time to sort of throw it out to everyone who's joined us, because coming together and thinking about this in terms of these different sort of scales, as John put it, and this larger ambition for where we want to move to in the future, it would be very enriching, I think, for this last few minutes of the conversation to hear any last sort of questions or reflections from anyone in the audience. And, I hope that I'll see all of you again at some of the future venues, but to make the most of this last bit of time, I think it's good to throw it out to you guys and hear any last thoughts or questions.
I just wanted to ask about the film that the two of you made for Walthamstow. I understand that maybe it's unfinished. And a couple questions, and then you can. So it'd be nice to sort of hear what the next step is with the film. And also, you left us hanging about how many panels and how many houses. It'd be nice just to know where that's at. I'm about to put solar on my house, and I'm putting 4 panels because that's all that will fit. And some roofs are difficult, and chimneys shadow things, and just any points you might have.
Oh, sorry. So the film, I suppose we make multiple films as we go along that we share kind of work so far. We've got because we have an online kind of membership site, but there's free access, so we have kind of more workshop style films and then films that we put out on social media. So that film is a longer kind of teaser. It's a bit long. So the aim is that we make a feature documentary. So that's our background. Our last film was a feature documentary with a cinema release and distribution, and continues to screen it with campaign groups and things. So that would be the aim for this, although it could be in other episodes. But in terms of the narrative arc, we felt like actually we can't end the story on one street. It's quite an anti-climax. Already it's kind of inspiring other action, but for that film to really be a tool, I mean, not to limit it as a film as just a tool, but a tool in a kind of movement that the film can travel out and inspire more action. We thought we needed to actually expand it and tell a bigger story of how this is happening across the nation. So we've got a lot to do, and within that, I mean, you saw there were interviews with different communities and experts. We're also kind of interweaving an archive story of the history of power and the national grid in the UK, and looking at that locally on the ground in Waltham
forest where, it all started quite piecemeal and then it became, nationalised and now privatised. So there's the challenge for us, and we need, we're always trying to raise funds to actually have the time to work on the edits and interweave the action and the argument and the kind of artistic elements of the film. So yeah, sometimes when we show stuff, it's quite rough and ready, but we're gathering a lot of footage, and the bigger story is going to be released. And in terms of the solar, the first wave was maybe only 16 houses, which always feels like, oh, great, it's a very long street. We're like, couldn't we live on a shorter one? But also there's a kind of now maybe another double that waiting, but those issues with smaller rooftops was very much on our street. They are really quite small houses. They were built, I think, by building societies in like 1890s to house the growing population. Like the Lee Valley in London just expanded with factory industry, and they're all built on basically floodplain marshes, the kind of lowest lying land. But yeah, the roofs are also very small and chimneys. So the current installer, which was Octopus, were more reticent or weren't willing to install on flat rooftops. So the south-facing side of the street have all got 4 panels. They're not big systems, because if we went onto the flat side rooftops, we'd have 8. We didn't want to have batteries for each individual house, because we're kind of holding out for a more community battery microgrid solution. Same with air source heat. It wouldn't make sense on that kind of tightly knit terrace. So far, 16 rooftops, another double that to go if we can work out the flat rooftops, which I think the issue with those was, I was asking them, like, why not? And do you test these things in wind tunnels and stuff? And because of the more extreme weather events that are happening and massive gales, and we saw that sleeping on the roof. They're like, you know what it's like to be a solar panel. We're like, yeah, it's pretty. So I can see the concerns about not having enough space around them to really have that margin for error. But I think they've gone away with learnings from this site, because often solar panels are people who can afford them more on bigger detached houses that can have massive systems. So yeah, how do you adapt that for a kind of really dense urban environment? So these are all questions that are still, being worked out as we go collaboratively.
Great. Any other? Please go for it.
Can I just do 2 quick associated points? One was that we're now trying to move out to do another 5 streets across Britain. So we're looking to try and collaborate with I guess community interest companies potentially, or charities around Britain that have strong ties with their communities and obviously an interest in retrofit. Just because I think it's like the Tour de France type of thing. I think we were saying the other day, it's like, although you see, what seems to be an action of like 2 people and a little, part of the community around, all of this really needs to have an entourage and an infrastructure beyond that. So having being able to work with locally embedded, I guess, activists, in a way, and for them to be able to support their local streets, I think is really important, and also just part of their own civic kind of identity as well. And then the other point, this is just a bit of a random one, but just wanted to get this in because you were talking about reflections. I just wanted to keep banging on about the ancient art of story. So this one, it's just a Tolstoy thing. I love a bit of Tolstoy. So, like Tolstoy says, just as one candle lights another and can light thousands of other candles, so one heart illuminates another heart and can illuminate thousands of other hearts. And in a way, if you just get rid of the one heart and just think one story, one story can illuminate another story and create multiple stories. And in a way, I think that's the point about extrapolating an idea across places. The story will always belong to the place in a way. The stories are always specific to people and places, but they also represent the wider, when they relate to others, they represent the bigger picture too. I think that's the tension that we're talking about when looking at like the hero's journey and stuff, and the problem with that. We're all just standing in for the wider story, basically.
Amazing. Any other thoughts, questions from... Yeah, you might have to shout. You're probably, or you could come up. Yeah, go on.
A question for Dan and Hilary, sorry. I was just wondering about the kind of the finance side of things. Like, who did you find was buying the greenbacks? Was it people from within the local area or outside? Was it like businesses or individuals?
Weirdly, like today, when we arrived at Birmingham Station, we went to have a coffee, and then we were standing next to a guy who was like, "Oh, are you the power station guy?" Yeah. And he'd bought invested in it when we were on the roof. So I think really we find that people all over the place buy it because of that point about the microcosm. This isn't about like just the benefit of that one street in a way, or that's certainly not how we view it. This is just a demonstration of what should be done everywhere, and we're always saying that. And therefore it resonates with people who really care. And, you could go into like, and this is a kind of more of a marketing-y type of point, like who is the average customer or whatever, and try and do a profile, or the person that buys these notes. Often weirdly, it seems it is older people who really are worried about the world that they're leaving for their grandchildren, actually. That often seems to be the case, but there is a big diversity of places and people, I reckon, who buy it. What do you think?
Yeah, well, we previously printed money for when we did this bank job project before, and we had a bit more analysis of where they went, but it's kind of similar, because someone at UCL in the, what would that be, data mapping, kind of mapped out our sales data, and it was amazing. Well, I kind of knew it because I'd been writing envelopes, but like a lighthouse off the coast of Scotland and then San Francisco and Singapore, you're like, what? And it was just really strange, but it was, I suppose, that was at that point mainly because of like maybe one press article that had got out further, and then the multiple kind of reverberations of that. So it is, I like writing envelopes and like just thinking about all these different people and why and how they found out about it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you.
And I think there was another one just from the same area. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you, everybody. It's been really empowering to be here. I'm Philip. It's nice to. Question for everybody. Are you aware of things like permitted development rights and the changes and things like airspace? So if you're going to refurbish a place, why not just add another story as well? And all of the other stuff, and also doing this as a block. So say the whole street is 100 houses. On one side, the front is facing south, on the other side, the back is facing south. So then everybody, everywhere gets this, and by the synchronicity of it, by everybody doing it, you get added value. Now, there's lots of people who do it on small scale. The reason why the big scales don't do it is because they're too big. So, question to everybody, are you aware of permitted developments, and how do you think that can help everybody?
I'm happy to kick off while everyone's brains are like warming up. But so if anybody's interested in some of our thoughts on this at the Building Centre on the 28th, one of our opening talks is going to really focus on a lot of work we've been doing that we haven't really shared here because we're not yet sure how to not make it really, really depressing. And when we weren't sure about kicking off the festival like that. But we're in the process of, when you are honest with the scale of what we're facing, how do you turn that sort of slightly depressing info into something that is liberating, I think is really important. So absolutely, where we've written this kind of street as a living system, it's not just really about let's insulate and solar panel the houses in one go. Fundamentally, what most of the data is showing us is that Britain's consumption levels of material consumption for a long, long time have been colonial and extractive and horrendous. And as we continue that story, the material budget we have to play around with and what we need to achieve, way out of sync. so out of sync of an order of magnitude that we can't even mention without getting terrified. And sorry if I'm using jargon, but like literally like the materials we need to use to make all the changes that we need to make, we would blow our carbon budgets by doing that. And some of you who maybe are in that sort of decolonial thinking or scholarship world will know that what that kind of bind leads you to is exactly what we've seen through history of resource wars and who can grab the most, the quickest, right? This is really linked to what you've asked. I'm just going on a bit of a journey, right? And so I just want to say, if you are like interested in that, this starts to put us into a really fundamental question about the reimagined bit. Indeed, Johar is going to talk about this quite a lot and share a lot about the work, but this means quite a large-scale reimagination of how we live. You know, I know in Britain, if you say something like there's going to need to be more intergenerational families, people are like, what, I've got to live with my parents sort of thing. But I know in other cultures, that's like a very normal thing, so it's not so scary, right? But my point is this means that when we're talking about reimagination, this is just a warm-up, right? A warm-up of, and we've talked about this quite a lot when we chatted the other day on the boat, like the things that we're doing to unlock our imaginations, to come together collectively, I think is going to actually be more serious than can we work together to insulate and put solar panels on. I think we collectively are going to be in a set of questions that include what you're saying, right? Where as a street, as a neighborhood, we are fundamentally going to have to think about 1,000,001 things. That might mean we cannot build thousands and thousands of new homes because we literally will not have the material budgets to do them. That might mean that the way we live and the way we think about housing might have to fundamentally change. We might have to add stories rather than build whole new houses. We might have to go into the ground. We might have to reduce the amount of space on our streets to cars and move solely to electric bikes and electric cars for accessibility and logistics and emergencies, because we are going to have to create so much solar shade because our temperatures are going up, and some of the only places you're going to be able to cool. There's 1,000,001 different versions of this. None of these are truths. I'm not saying we have to do this or we have to do that, but we know that this isn't I feel like we're getting desensitized to the word climate emergency or crisis. It isn't just going to be easy, nice, it's not going to be like straight arrows. We're going to go from this to this. It's going to be quite messy and complex. So I basically think exactly what you're saying, right? There's all of these opportunities that we won't just also be able to wait for revolutions. Indeed, in Dark Matter Labs, we'll talk about this idea of the boring revolution, where you use the existing things that are coming, like the shift in permitted development rights and other things, to look at how does this allow us to start grappling with some of the difficult questions. There's actual architects on this panel who can go much more into what you've mentioned, but I did think it was a really good example of we haven't grappled with it yet because they're like all warming up, and we've got to you got to be safe before you can really go into oh, okay, hold on. What does this actually mean for what we've got to do? But I really think some of the things that you're saying, adding a layer on, changing the formation of homes, all of this is going to be part of the story, because I don't think it's going to be millions of new homes, thousands and thousands of solar panels, all of this. Yeah, technology will change. There will be less use of lithium. We will start to understand the horrendous extraction that's happening on behalf. So I'm just interested in people also who are working in that space to look at the system as is, the shifts we can make, and some of what some of the bigger data and things are showing us about whether we're going to recreate the same economic system that got us here and just try and grab as much material and what we can get, or whether we're really able to do that deep economic and moral transformation of how we get there.
Yeah, and actually, I think there's this limitation is actually hugely reinforcing of what you were saying in terms of sort of the scale at which you need to be thinking about the built environment, because to zoom in on one particular instance of what Amy was talking about, we're predicted to run out of construction grade sand within a matter of decades, which means concrete, the number one used material to create the built environment currently, is no longer viable. So you start to immediately get into a space where thinking about land, thinking about the built environment as a collection of atomized properties is just a nonsense, because you have a resource. You know, construction grade sand is the second most consumed natural material in the world after water, and you have to get to a point where you realize that actually this does need to be planned at an economic level rather than something that is house by house, case by case basis. So exactly what you're saying about thinking of the built environment in this larger frame is absolutely essential, and hopefully something that will become far more commonplace very quickly, hopefully. But yeah, thank you very much. I think, do we have time for maybe one more? Yep, Joe, yeah.
Thank you. I feel very moved to speak. I might need to sit down, but it feels like being in a Quaker meeting. And I have got quite a few things I want to say, and I'm not quite sure how I'll weave them together. But, you know, there's both Theodore Roosevelt and Noam Chomsky have said we've got to do. He said, Theodore Roosevelt said it historically, Noam Chomsky's saying it now. We all have to use all our talents, all of us, all together now, because we all need to do what we can with what we're facing. And I just want to sort of weave together also, we've been talking about, you know, there's the built environment, but this is far more than the built environment. And we've been extrapolating the talk about retrofit in Balsall Heath to encompass so much more. It encompasses relationships, it encompasses spiritual stuff, it encompasses life and death. It encompasses retrofitting our habits, our minds, our souls, our everything, how we do everything together. So this is, you know, there's so many skills and qualities. There's love and there's care and imagination we've talked about here, and that is absolutely key. I think just it's fantastic what we have been able to talk about and bring together here. So, I mean, we had Jules from the Climate Majority Project here. There's a panel up top there, which has been founded by him and Rupert Reed, with thinking about filling in the backfill behind the activists who are taking non-violent direct action, civil resistance, Extinction Rebellion, Just Stop Oil, everybody. There's loads of, we all need to be activists, we all need to be activated in whatever way we can be. Rupert Reed in his books is talking about, and I wanted to pick up, we were talking about utopias and dystopias. He's talking about we need to develop through topias, how we think and navigate our way through what we're facing so that we can go through together. And it's very moving to be in this pool because we're all going underwater. You know, half the world's going underwater, and it's imagining that process and then rising. I love that Kamran said he's not anxious anymore, and we need to sort of move from anxiety and fear to just really get all on board. I love that Sabrina, who is here, one of our local residents, they've just had their new baby, who's Sammy, who was with us yesterday. He's just 3 weeks old, born at home. And his big brother's Noah, you know, and I often think of, you know, John as being a bit of a Mr. Noah, you know, and this is our ark, and we need to just all do everything in every different way we can, with all these different ways in which we can. And I love that we've had Nassim here today, and the Saheli, you know, Saheli means being friends. And we all need to be Saheli with each other and, you know, actually build these relationships with one another so that we can be strong together, because that's what we're going to need to do. Because never mind, like, again, Kamran was saying, climate breakdown, it's the social breakdown that's more terrifying, really, that we need to prepare ourselves for. So it's about building our robustness, and, thank goodness for this. And thank goodness that we can share, we can live stream, we can go nationally. And thank goodness that there is a big team, so that it's not, hopefully, it's not all hanging on one person. There's a lot of us. We can do this all together, and that's what we need to.
Thank you so much for that, Joe. I'm just gonna optional final thoughts from everyone on the panel. I always find it's kind of a little annoying when someone says you have to say something, so I'll make it up to you if there's any last things that you'd like to add before we wrap up today.
I'll just say some very final thoughts from me. I just think together as a community, if we can master modesty, humility, and simplicity together, we'll solve all of our problems straight away. Thank you.
I think another thing that's been talked a lot about is today was just the importance of trust. And something we kind of live by at We Can Make is that everything moves at the pace of trust, and you can't rush it as well. It's about building that trust, and that, I think, needs to be a big focus, really.
I just want to say thank you, really, for being part of this and seeing these spaces of hope, really, hope in action. So, yeah, thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, can we just give enormous final round of applause to this panel? Thank you. And to yourself as well.